Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Anna Stone. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of East London, and I'm just recording this brief video to explain some ideas on the theme of why do we believe in ghosts. To start with, I'd like to make it clear that we do believe in ghosts. Various surveys suggest that anywhere between 40% and 60% of the population of the UK have some level of belief in ghosts. It's not always all or nothing, it's not 0 or 100%, but some level of belief in ghosts. They're a popular theme. And people all around the world believe in ghosts, different kinds of ghosts. And that's going to be something of a theme of this talk. There are many reasons for believing in ghosts because there are many different kinds of ghosts. I'm just going to cover a few of them randomly chosen from around the world. In Russia, they have a ghost called a Rusalka. It's a woman who died by drowning. Sometimes she drowned herself as a result of ill treatment from a husband or another man. Maybe a man got her pregnant and abandoned her. She drowned herself, and she hangs around in lakes and rivers to drown men who happen to be passing by. Maybe the guilty party or just a different man in general. In America, the Native Americans have ghosts, people who've died and they come back and they interact with the living in a fairly natural way. It's like they have a second life after they're dead. They come back and participate in everyday activities. The ghosts are all around us. They're not unusual. In Northern Europe, we have something called the Wild Hunt. It's led by Odin, who's the chief of the Norse gods. Now, can you imagine a stormy night? There's clouds blowing, the wind's blowing fast, the clouds are whipping across the sky. It could look like a bunch of people on horseback chasing across the sky, if you have a vivid imagination. That's the Wild Hunt. It's Odin and the ghosts of dead warriors hunting across the sky. In Chile, there are some deserted mining villages. The miners were very badly treated. They were virtually slaves. They were worked to death. Angry. They're very angry. And the towns are now deserted, but there are stories that the towns are inhabited by the angry ghosts of the dead miners. In the UK, we have a black dog. In various parts of the UK, the black dog appears. Sometimes it has red eyes. It appears in different forms. But its purpose is generally to warn us that somebody is going to die. Not necessarily the person who sees the black dog, could be someone else, but when the black dog appears, somebody is going to die. That's a warning. So that was just a snapshot of various different kinds of ghosts from around the world, but they introduced some of the themes I'm going to cover now. And the first one I'm going to look at is called the belief in a just world. And it's a very common belief. We all have an innate sense of justice. We want to see bad people punished, good people rewarded. We want to see the right outcome. We want to see people treated fairly. It angers us, it annoys us to see somebody who's been mistreated and they have no comeback. It annoys us to see a cheat or a fraud getting away with it. Sadly, all too often people do get away with it. We don't get the right outcome in life. So I think you can see where it's very tempting to think that maybe the right outcome happens after death. Maybe somebody who was cheated while they were alive can come back after death to punish the person who cheated them. It's a kind of a satisfying thought. And indeed, it's been used in fiction. I'll give you a couple of examples from William Shakespeare. In Hamlet, Hamlet's father is killed by Hamlet's uncle, and the ghost of Hamlet's father appears to Hamlet to ask him to take revenge. In Macbeth, Macbeth murders Banquo, and the ghost of Banquo appears at a celebration feast, all white and covered in blood, to accuse Macbeth. And there are numerous other examples as well. It's something of a staple of fiction. There are stories, there are films about somebody who's died with unfinished business and they've come back to right a wrong. Another kind of ghost is the friendly protector. Somebody who returns to watch over their family, or somebody, maybe a stranger, but often family, to give them good advice, to protect them. An example of this would be Bruce Willis in the film The Sixth Sense, where Bruce comes back as a ghost to guide and protect a young boy who can also see ghosts. In Charles Dickens' story of A Christmas Carol, the character Ebenezer Scrooge, a thoroughly unpleasant person, sees 4 ghosts. The first, the ghost of his dead partner, Jacob Marley, and then, of course, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, the ghost of Christmas future, who all give visions to Ebenezer Scrooge to warn him of the terrible fate. He's going to die lonely. Nobody will be there when he dies. His body will be robbed after he's died if he doesn't mend his ways. Of course, he does mend his ways, and the story has a happy ending. In South Carolina, they have a thing called a grey man, a figure that appears before a hurricane, and it warns people to take cover. And it's been credited with saving a few lives. So that's the idea of a ghost as a friendly protector. And these kind of both have themes of the dead person having something they need to communicate. The dead have a need to communicate with the living, either to right a wrong or to protect someone. But sometimes dead people just want to communicate with us. We all like to think that something is going to happen after we die. We don't like to think that when we die, that's the end, that's it. And we don't like to think that people we love, when they die, that's it, they've gone forever. We like to think that they're up there somewhere or out there somewhere looking down on us. And a lot of people take a great deal of comfort from this idea. Religious people and non-religious people, there's a lot of comfort in knowing that somebody you love who's died is still out there somewhere. And people try to send messages and communicate with their departed loved ones. This is the essence of spirit mediumship. If you go to a seance or a stage show with a psychic consultant, this is a lot of what they're doing. They're carrying messages to and from people who've died. And people find this very comforting. I'm going to move on to look at some of the quirks of how the brain works that may lead us to think we've seen a ghost. And the first idea I'm going to look at is the idea of hallucinations. These are surprisingly common, especially a hallucination of someone who's recently died. Some studies say that over 80% of people, if someone they're very close to has recently died, they're likely to have a hallucination of seeing them. Maybe you'll turn around suddenly and you'll just see them there, or you'll see someone who looks a bit like them and you'll mistake it for them. These are very common. They do fade over time, but in the first few months after somebody you were very close to dies, it's quite likely that you may see a hallucination of them. If we don't realise how common this is, we might obviously think that we've seen a ghost. Another topic is the idea of sleep paralysis. This is where the mind is awake, but the body is asleep. And it happens when people are either falling asleep or waking up. Again, it's a lot more common than you might think. Something like 10 or more % of the population will have sleep paralysis at some point. Some people have it repeatedly. It's more likely to happen when we're under stress. Can be unpleasant. If you have sleep paralysis or someone you know, do have a look on the NHS website where there's some very useful advice. But imagine that you are lying in bed, your mind is awake, but you can't move your body. You may feel a sense of something pressing on your chest, it's hard to breathe, and you see a figure at the foot of the bed. It's not very distinct. This could be quite scary. In the Middle Ages, people used to think this was a demon of some kind, evil spirit. Starting in the 1950s, people used to think that it might be an alien, and this was part of an alien abduction experience. We might think it was a ghost. Both the idea of the hallucination and the sleep paralysis have in common that the brain is essentially playing a trick on us. It's making us think that there is a figure in the room when there isn't really, and we then interpret that figure in a way that makes sense to us. And this brings us on to the very interesting relationship between belief and experience. It's easy to say that experience leads to belief. If you see a ghost, you're likely to believe in ghosts. That makes sense. But it's just as interesting to say that belief may lead to experience. If you see something which is ambiguous, it's indistinct. If you believe in ghosts, you may think you've seen a ghost. You label your experience as a ghost sighting. If you don't believe in ghosts, you may label it as something else, an alien abduction, or just a weird hallucination, or something moving out of the corner of your eye. If you're walking around an old building, it's dark, you see something moving in the corner of your eye. If you believe in ghosts, if you've come on a ghost hunting weekend, yeah, you may very well say you've seen a ghost. If you don't believe in ghosts, you've just seen something weird moving in the corner of your eye. We tend to have these indistinct experiences and then we label them in a way that makes sense to us. And of course, ghosts are very much part of our popular culture. We have stories, films about ghosts. We like telling each other ghost stories. We gather around the campfire at night, we tell ghost stories. Very popular around Halloween, also around Christmas time. You might think the ghost story is not a very jolly Christmas idea, but they are popular at Christmas time. I suppose traditionally Christmas, it's midwinter, it's dark, we gather around the fire, we tell ghost stories. They're very traditional. And of course, parents encourage their children to read fairy stories, read them stories about fairies and goblins and pixies and other manners of supernatural beings. And this is good for children. It helps them to exercise their imagination and expand their cognitive ability. We tend to stop believing in pixies and goblins and fairies as we grow older, but for some reason we maintain our belief in ghosts. And I've been through a few ideas as to why the ghost might be particularly satisfying to us. So the final idea I'd like to look at is the idea that we are naive dualists. When I say naive, I don't mean gullible or silly. I mean, we haven't been taught to think in a dualist way. We do it naturally because it makes sense to us. And by dualist, I mean that we conceive of ourselves as having two aspects, the physical body and the mind, or the soul, or the spirit, or the ego. These are slightly different concepts, but they're all talking about roughly the same thing. And it's the essential I, the personality, the ego, the mind. We conceive of it as being a different thing to the body. That's what dualism is. And it's a natural way for us to think. But because we think of the mind, the self, the soul, the spirit, as being something different from the body, this raises the possibility that it might actually be able to exist separately from the body. And that means it might be able to survive bodily death. So naive dualism in its own way can also contribute to a belief in ghosts. I've been through quite a few ideas now. If you're interested, you can contact me, ask some more about them. It's been covered quite a few ideas, and I hope something here has been of interest to you. So thank you for your time.